So Congresswoman, let's just start out with some news of the day questions. You're a former law enforcement. President Trump announced last week that he was going to indict former FBI Director James Comey, or the Justice Department did, I should say. It was brought in the Eastern District of Virginia. What was your reaction to that? And do you think that leads to a precedent that critics would say is a bad precedent?
Well, I think you have to look at the full kind of complexity of the situation, which is you initially did say that President Trump indicted, and I think that given that he was sort of dictating via social media what he expected to happen, I think it is a fair assertion to say that it's unprecedented to have a president of the United States dictate on social media the legal actions that the Department of Justice should take. And, I have deep concerns, and I mean, it's really horrifying the fact that multiple U.S. attorneys have now resigned across multiple different offices, but to include the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, it seems that he stepped down because he was not willing to do the things that Donald Trump was tasking him to do. And ultimately, it took him multiple U.S. attorneys to find one who would, and now the acting U.S. attorney, in fact, did move forward with this indictment. But I think that the statement put out by Mr. Comey is a very clear one, that he believes in our system of justice, as do I. And so I think ultimately justice will prevail. And but it's a disturbing precedent, particularly given that it's all dictated via the president initially through social media.
Right. And obviously a potential government shutdown is very much in the news, a shutdown that could obviously impact Virginia. You have the White House OMB office circulating a memo, foreshadowing potential layoffs in the case of a government shutdown. Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer will be going to the White House tomorrow to meet with President Trump. Democrats are saying we want Obamacare subsidies extended and we want a repeal of those Medicaid cuts. Do you view this as Democrats should take it or leave it? If they don't get those demands, should they leave the table? Or, should they essentially work with Republicans to, keep the government open for the time being?
Well, as a former member of Congress who represented Virginia and as a Virginian, I know that there is nothing worse. The impact on Virginia is always so substantial in times of government shutdowns. I was always the fiercest advocate for avoiding government shutdowns time and time again when, of course, across my time in Congress, it looked like we might be even inching close. And I think that it's important that President Trump is going to be meeting with Democratic leadership, but ultimately, my expectation, what I want to see happen for the sake of Virginians, the economy, and the basic function of our federal government is for this president and Republican-led Congress to prioritize getting a bill across the finish line, getting a bill to the president's desk and doing so quickly because the government shutdown is quickly coming upon us. And the reality that perhaps the OMB director would use a government shutdown as a reason to fire additional federal workers after the assault on the federal workforce from the DOJ effort is just one more additional reason why I expect Republican leadership, I expect the president to work with Democratic leadership for everyone to actually come together, get a bill, get it voted on, and get it to the president's desk.
Well, on that note, do you think the administration wants to reach a deal? I mean, I think oftentimes we come up to these potential government shutdowns. We're right on the edge, and it just turns into a partisan shouting match back and forth, and it's the blame game. Do you think the administration wants a deal ultimately?
I have a hard time answering the question because it's inconceivable to me that the President of the United States wouldn't want the basic function of our government, that the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader in the Senate wouldn't want to actually do their job, which is appropriating funds. I mean, they've already fallen far behind. The fact that we are yet again trying to do, or the Congress is trying to do a continuing resolution, is because last year they couldn't do their job and actually get full funding bills through. And so the reality of this moment is that we need a Congress that's actually committed to getting appropriations bills through and stop depending just on continuing resolutions. But in the absence of being able to do that, they need to prioritize funding the government and ensuring the basic function of our government. And so I can't speak for what the Trump administration wants, but it's inconceivable to me that they would even for a moment want a government shutdown.
Yeah, and Leader Schumer and a lot of other a handful of Democrats earlier this year, I think, had a very similar argument when they were coming up to that first potential government shutdown. But when Schumer and those Democrats voted along with Republicans, they got a lot of backlash from other Democrats for voting with Republicans. What's your advice, for Democrats as they try to work with the Trump administration? I mean, should they even work with the Trump administration? How do they work with them or fight back?
So during my time in Congress, under the first Trump administration, I had bills signed into law by the president. Mm-hmm. During my time in Congress, I was focused on ensuring that we didn't face a government shutdown because Virginia is the most impacted state in a time of a government shutdown. And so now as a candidate for governor, looking at what is happening in Washington, I'm seeing these series of events that just so negatively impact Virginia and Virginia's economy. The trade policies coming out of this administration are wreaking havoc on Virginia's farmers and our foresters, and our business owners of all sizes and ultimately consumers. Back to school shopping, Halloween costume shopping. Shortly we'll have holiday shopping, right? The impact is real. And this is on top of the fact that everywhere I go across Virginia, people are talking about issues of affordability, particularly in housing and healthcare and energy costs. And also, this is after Virginia has been so impacted by the DOGE cuts. Thousands of Virginians who have lost their jobs. We have had 7 months of negative or of increased unemployment rates in Virginia. And we look, according to UVA, in 2026, we will have no job growth here in the Commonwealth of Virginia because of the impacts of what we're seeing. And so given the impact of the tariffs, the impact of DOGE, the impending impact of the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, I, as a candidate for governor, am focused on the fact that a government shutdown is just one additional element that will create and continue to create dire circumstances for so many Virginians.
Right. So if you're Schumer or Jeffries, it's make a deal with the Trump administration. That's what you think should happen.
I would like to see a president who actually wants to see the function of government occur, right? Because what happens when there's a government shutdown? People's Social Security checks may get delayed. My experience as a former federal agent is, and after that as a CIA officer, I was an undercover CIA officer working counterterrorism cases overseas during some of the times when we came, within inches of a government shutdown. I remember one time being overseas, going around a table with all the others about who was handling which cases, who had what coming up in the coming weeks to determine who was going to be an essential employee. The idea that you have CIA case officers or name your function within the federal government, keeping people safe, supporting our veterans at the VA or in the veterans hospitals. The list goes on and on. The idea that those folks have to actually spend time sort of asserting whether or not their job function is essential for what is coming up because the president isn't working to bring people together, because the majority leader can't get a bill to pass the Senate. That's the reality of where we are. And so the majority leader of the Senate, it's his job to bring a bill forward that can pass. The president should demonstrate leadership in trying to make that be the case as well. And certainly as a candidate for governor here, but most importantly, just as a Virginian, that's what I want to see happening in Washington, because everything else is just negatively impacting the people that I've previously served as a member of Congress and aim to serve once again as governor.
Bringing it back to the governor's race itself, I was struck by a headline, I think it was in the Virginia Pilot this morning. It said the governor's race is economic issues versus cultural issues. And watching you campaign and watching the lieutenant governor campaign, it seems like it's two different universes, two different messages. I guess, how do you reconcile those two issues? We know that, with the Republicans' message in 2024, a lot of people voted for President Trump's promises of lowering costs, lowering inflation, et cetera. But he was also campaigning a lot on some of these cultural issues. How do you reconcile those two?
Well, I can't explain what it is that my opponent is doing in her campaign, but I will tell you that the reason the first plan that I laid out was a affordability plan is because from the moment I got in this race, the moment I declared my candidacy for governor, everywhere I go, people talk about the issues of affordability. People talk about the fact that there are housing shortages, that they are getting priced out of the rental market or the housing market, that young families can't buy their starter home and retirees can't buy a retirement home, that rental prices continue to go up, and that business that we may be able to attract to different parts of Virginia, that they recognize that there may not be significant or sufficient housing for those they might want to bring in from a workforce perspective. Energy costs across Virginia continue to go up, and it's particularly dire in Southwest and far Southwest Virginia. And then healthcare prices have continued to be a challenge, particularly at the pharmacy counter with prescription drug pricing, and it's only going to get worse because of the so-called one big beautiful bill. And so the first plan I laid out was my affordability plan because it's responsive to the things I've been hearing about for nearly 2 years that I've been running for governor. And so that's why my campaign is focused on the economy, focused on lowering costs, focused on growing our economy, focused on steadying Virginia, particularly amid so many of the economic impacts of the bad policies coming out of Washington, because I'm responding to the things that voters are asking me about on a daily basis. And as governor, I'm recognizing that when you want to serve a state that has seen unemployment rates continually go up, that you have to have a plan to bring investment here and bring jobs here. When you have seen thousands of Virginians lose their jobs because of the DOGE impact, you have to have a plan for trying to steady the economy. When farmers all across Virginia are just incredibly impacted by loss of markets because of retaliatory tariffs, you have to be a governor with a plan. And when everywhere I go, people are talking about the cost of housing, you have to have a plan to build up supply and to steady the market.
And Julia, we have about 4 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Just to wrap this up, critics, I think, of the Trump administration would say they've made a lot of missteps, whether it was the Jimmy Kimmel incident, the Comey indictment, the list goes on. But we still see Democrats struggling. They lost, obviously in 2024, lost major ground in last year's election. And some would say it's because they believe the party has moved too far to the left. I mean, it's interesting watching these off-year elections with yourself and Congresswoman Cheryl up in New Jersey, but then Zohran Mamdani is a very different kind of Democrat than you and the Congresswoman. How do you think the party is handling this dynamic, and how should they handle this dynamic of including moderate voices and also very progressive voices?
Well, I think that what the issues that you had mentioned, such as, the FCC trying to leverage the power of government to impact a news station, or the President of the United States tweeting directions towards what should be a thoughtful and independent, law-minded Department of Justice, those are beyond politics. Those are attacks on our basic constitutional priorities. And I think everyone, regardless of party and regardless of party affiliation, should be denouncing them. And we've certainly saw people across party spectrum, across ideological spectrum, denouncing both of those issues. But looking at my race for governor, looking at the race for governor in New Jersey, I think when you're talking about leading a state, and I'll speak for Virginia because I can't speak for New Jersey geography and industry, but in Virginia, we have broad industry, right? Here we are in Hampton Roads, where it's the site of the largest naval base in the world. It will ultimately be the largest offshore wind installation in the country. But you drive a short period of time and you're quickly in agricultural communities, whether that's Waterman to the north, or you go into peanut farms over to the west. The reality of Virginia as a state and as economy is that it is extraordinarily diverse, and it has faced real impacts, certainly over the past 9 months. But before that, costs were an issue. Before that, costs were something people were worried about, talking about, and now, as we head towards these 2025 elections, they're central to my campaign because it's actually the job of a governor to address the things that worry people most and impact our ability to engage in the economy or people's ability to start a business. If you're worried about how you're going to pay your rent or your mortgage, you can't take that risk to start a business and grow a business. You're not going to hire a couple more employees if you're worried about what your input costs are, because tariffs are driving up the costs of the things you need to buy to run your business. If you're a would-be third-generation farmer and you see that your parents are working every single day while fertilizer prices are going up and they're losing markets for their products, maybe you decide not to take over the family farm. So here in Virginia, the priorities that I'm pursuing, it isn't just about the issue of costs for one individual person. It's actually the overall function of our economy and what that means for our communities, for the industries that are here, for the family farms that survive or thrive or fail. And that's how I view the issues that I'm focused on. It's about how do you strengthen Virginia? How do you put Virginia first? And on a national landscape, my goal is to make sure that despite some of the chaos coming out of Washington, we have a governor who puts Virginia first.
But on a national landscape, and finally, is there room for someone like yourself, someone who is a moderate Democrat, and someone like Zohran Mamdani, who identifies as a Democratic Socialist? Is there room under the Democratic tent for both of you?
I think every location is going to be different, right? I feel quite confident saying I'd probably never get elected in New York City. And it's a good thing because I'm never going to run there. But I'm running for governor in Virginia, where people run the political spectrum. And I will frequently say to people, I'm a Democrat, you don't have to be to vote for me. And there are people across the spectrum who agree with me or disagree with me, sometimes from my left, sometimes from my right. And I think that there's an importance of what is the goal of being in this political process. For me, it's about results. And so I have found that many people who want to see results, who want to see someone with a plan, who want to see someone who's thinking about the issues that keep them up at night, and who believes that, as I do, that it is their job to actually try and address them. Maybe not fix everything in a day, but to make real impacts on the issues that are keeping families up at night, that are dictating some of the choices that people are able to make with their family, with their business, that they want someone in the position of governor who's actually focused on those issues. And so that's why I'm excited about this campaign. I continue to work hard along the campaign trail to ensure that people know that if that's what they want in a governor, I am their candidate.